Powering Angular with Rust. As soon as I saw this one, I knew we had to talk about it. I am so curious, and I have no idea what we're in for here. Let's go on this journey together, boys. This article explains how to set up and start using Rust in your Angular applications. Why? If the code of your app has parts where you need to work with a large amount of data, especially numbers, WebAssembly can do it much faster. Okay, you're winning me over already. I tend to find people reach for WebAssembly as this magic solution to not using JavaScript. It's not that. WASM is not a great replacement for your framework in the browser. Like rewriting React in Rust so that you can run it in WASM is not going to be much better simply because the bindings between WASM and the DOM aren't any better than they are in JavaScript. So you're still bottlenecked by that super hard. And then the size of the binaries and things you have to load for it is not great. I have a whole video to check out about why WebAssembly is a bit overhyped that you should definitely watch if you're curious about my thoughts there. But this opening has me very, very hopeful because this is absolutely true. There's a bunch of things WebAssembly is the better solution for. Crazy stuff like there's FFmpeg in WASM, so you can do video encoding shit in the browser natively. That's nuts. And when you're doing heavy data processing, be it numbers or video or pictures or all the crazy shit everybody from like Figma to I guess what we're doing here with Angular is doing, WASM's a great way to have a thing that takes in an input and spits out an output, do it way faster. And if that's what they're aiming for here is using WASM for the heavy data transform stuff, that's huge.
Deploying web stacks has never been easier. There's platforms like Vercel, Netlify, even Cloudflare Pages that make it so easy to take your code base and throw it up on the web, if it can handle serverless in JavaScript. For everyone else, it's not that easy. You have to spin up servers, databases, connect it all, and good luck setting up a preview environment for your pull requests. That is, unless you're using today's sponsor, Savala. These guys make it so much easier to do that level of developer experience while managing real, actual servers. They're not just another place to host a Docker image. They do so much more than that. They auto set up Cloudflare in front of your deployments. So this one just shows here, literally 2 clicks. I didn't do any custom anything here. They just automatically put DDoS protection in front of my service. So I don't have to worry about being DDoSed. If I have certain static pages that are being returned by my Laravel app here, yes, Laravel, even I can deploy Laravel on Savala. Never been so easy to take random things from there and throw them on a CDN. Do you know how annoying it is to deploy something from Laravel on a Docker image on Hetzner and then realize, oh, these 5 assets are huge. I should throw them on something else. And then realize how annoying it is to do that? These guys have you covered. And we didn't even show you the pipeline side. This is so cool. If you want to add preview deployments, like someone files a pull request and you want to see how it's working, doing that yourself, not particularly fun. If you don't want to have to pull down the other person's pull request just to run it on your machine and see if it's good or not, literally 1 click to add a preview build. And we have a whole pipeline here where I can create a preview app here, 1 click. Now we have one for this pull request. I can move it to different places. We even spin up a dev container here that will automatically sleep when it's not being used. So you have to worry about the bill. Speaking of bills, if you do sign up today, you get $50 of free credit. So check them out today at soydev.link/Savala.
Apparently people in chat didn't know that FFmpeg has a WASM build. It's not fully functioning, but FFmpeg WASM is really cool. It's very legit too. It's got now 13.5K stars plus the one I just did there. It's a very legit project. People are using it for really cool things. Not even hard to get started with. You install it as an NPM thing. Yes, you can install add FFmpeg/FFmpeg. They specify here though it only supports running in browser for good reason. But it's relatively easy to use even. You can call ffmpeg.load, pass it blobs for the content, and then call transcode commands to it directly. ffmpeg.exec, you pass it arguments. It's very legit and very cool. Maybe people didn't know about that. The license, I'm sure it's just MIT. Yeah, MIT licensed, as expected. Really cool thing. Seeing Gabriel that hyped on it means that I probably haven't talked about it enough and I should cover that stuff more. Back to the article. This is looking good so far. Examples include drawing, computing dynamic reports, complicated calculations like astronomy, physics type shit, cryptography, large language models, image editing, video processing, games, and so on. Yep, games are a weird one, but other than that, absolutely agree, and even parts of games largely agree. This is using WASM for the right things. It's not pretending WASM's the right way to build web apps. It's specifying that WASM helps solve these very specific problems. In this article, we'll create an Angular workspace with an application in a library written in Rust. Rust libraries we will compile into the WebAssembly module, and our Angular app will use that module. So they have steps on how to install Rust, all fine. But the interesting piece here is WASM Pack, which is a Rust crate for actually packaging your Rust apps so that they work for WASM. And Rust is one of the better languages for WebAssembly, without question. So this all makes sense to me so far. Angular Workspace. Oh boy. NX is, for those deep on my side of things, you probably know Turbo Repo is the main mono repo tool. NX is a little more popular on the Angular side. NX is in a really good state. Makes a lot of sense to recommend it here. They specify just use the required things because there's so much shit in NX. Yeah, NX has so many packages and configs and things. It's a massive ecosystem. But the less you can use, the best, probably. So we update the Angular CLI. We ng new Angular WASM example, no create application. Interesting. Then we go into it. Then we actually init the application after. Very interesting to not create the app. You're just using the CLI to build an empty project, and then you go in and create it after. Anyways, there are multiple ways for how to use a WASM module in our Angular app, and we'll go with the easiest one. Inside our Angular workspace, we'll create a regular Angular library, and that will be a wrapper for our Rust library. This wrapper will also export types as well as a function to initialize our WASM module. The type export's also a really cool thing, that you can get the Rust code to generate a binary you can call from JavaScript and have type definitions for it. Very cool. They also specify that we could have created a Rust library directly inside of our app, but it would have been even easier, and that would have made it easier to compile WASM files to some assets folder. But then other libraries of our application couldn't use that module. So if you, again, with a monorepo, you have multiple like submodules, and you want to make sure any of those can use WASM if necessary, you need to abstract that a little bit. If you just dump a .wasm folder in your, like, in this case, assets folder, that will just work. I'm about to say something I'm probably going to regret. Should I be mirroring this in Next to see how hard it is to do in Next as a comparison? I already regret saying that. I hate that I said that. Chat, yes, yes, please, yes, if you want to suffer, do it. I'm fucked. Why have I done this? I have a very boring vanilla Next app. I didn't even use T3 app because I want to be as vanilla and boring as possible here. Cool. So we got that. Let's go knit a Rust project. Pretty sure I already have cargo. Nice, I do. Failed to compile. I have to update my Rust version. How the fuck do I do that? Can somebody tell me the Rust up? So useful. Thank you, chat. And while that's going on, I'll start making the folder. Make dir wasm package. I'm not going to do a proper mono repo because I don't feel like dealing with that. So we're just going to build a little mini wasm folder inside of this project. So here we have source, librs, cargo file. I don't love that this is wasm pack source lib example source lib. So we're going to bump that up. And I'll kill this all. Just a preference thing. Shouldn't matter. Sure, my terminal is going to be upset with me. Yep. Cool. Now we should be in a place where we can actually do things. Back to the article, though, to see where we end up with. VCS none prevents the creation of a Git repo because we're already in the Git repo. Perfect. Now we need to edit our cargo. Just going to copy paste this one directly. Cool. Thankfully, this article is new enough that these things should be relatively up to date. We've added a lib section to specify the crate type, and we've added wasm bindgen as a dependency. Yep. Having wasm bindgen there is a dep. How you'll feel about toml as a format. It's weird to see that as like the default in any language. Too used to my JSON and YAML and everything else that's miserable. Okay, and librs, we have to replace content with this line. Adds a bunch of tools to create the communication bridge between JS and Rust. Cool. I'll just copy paste this whole snippet as a starting point. The get factorial function has an instruction above that tells wasm bindgen to make the function callable from JS. Is that what this is? The wasm bindgen? It's like a directive basically that says to the compiler, hey, make this accessible in JS. Because if so, that's pretty cool. Now we can build this. Oh, I couldn't install wasm pack before. That's why. So I was still in the old version. That makes sense. I was like, why isn't that working? I still find it particularly ironic that Rust compile times are so bad. And we're using Rust as the language to fix compile times in JavaScript, even though Rust compile times are like the actual worst. There's a lot of philosophy there that we could bicker about all day, and I'm going to avoid it, as tempting as it is. Cool. Now we're building. God, these build times are shit. Why does it need all of those things just to dump a little bit of Rust into the fucking, like, browser? It's kind of insane. Although I will admit I am very curious how big the WASM file is. Not too bad, all things considered. Only 15 kilobytes. That's fine. I was expecting worse. Cool. So I'm going to do this an extraordinarily lazy way. Actually, we're going to see what they recommend for how to do this. We'll go back to the article and follow along because it is very tempting to just copy paste that into the code base, but I want to do this the right way first. File projects, WASM example, source, public API, TS. Let's replace the following content, lib example. Oh, that's just a thing that already exists. I want this in the browser. So we will try to brute force it. I might have to just copy paste some things to test stuff. No idea how this will go. I haven't bound a Rust project as a WASM binding in a vanilla Next app ever before, believe it or not. So we'll see how this goes. Use client, because we want this to work on client specifically. And since everything's in source, it might be mad that this isn't. So I'm going to be lazy with it. And I'm just going to dump this package in source as my first quick test. So rename this to WASM package. I'm curious how this ends up feeling about me just calling it. We'll make a test function. Let's make sure this is working. On click. Sure. We're going to delete all the contents here. I'm so excited for the create next app update that cleans up the markup here a bit. Let's see what happens if I try to load this. Well, first I should run the dev server. Open up the console, get our fingers crossed. Cannot read properties of undefined. Reading bindgen add to stack pointer. Okay, where things start to get fun. How does this actually include that? Import meta URL. Oh boy. This way of building might actually be easier to brute force a mono repo. It's actually quite tempting to try that. How do I want to solve this problem? I have options, and I don't like most of the options I have. Do I do this properly as a mono repo, or do I try and brute force things? It doesn't matter if I'm passing in the event, because I don't do anything here. The problem is this get factorial bit is not importing properly. It's the w bindgen add to stack pointer. The thing I don't know if it exists, I should check the source here to see. Does this even load the WASM binding? It does not look like it does. I'm leaning towards mono repoing it and cloning what the dev in the tutorial is doing. We'll give that a shot, see what happens. There's an init function. Oh no, do I have to init it first? That might actually be it. Can I import the init here? If that's all it takes, I'll be very impressed. Nope. Argument 0 must be a buffer source. Oh, it says to take an argument? What the fuck do I pass it? I guess we'll keep reading. Preparing a workspace code. I'm going to skip all that and see if I can just brute force this to work now, because I'm so curious. Okay, so he just calls that one init function. Maybe it's just the like root thing. I just call init like that. Same stack pointer bindgen issue. Rip. Pass it an array buffer containing the WASM module. So I have to import it there. I'm just going to follow along now. I have concluded that I am not good enough at the WASM bundler chaos to do this without doing it through a mono repo where I'm actually letting Node do its thing. So we're going to grab create T3 turbo. We'll paste this WASM mono repo test npm. This might have too much shit in it now. I don't want to deal with setting up a database. I'm changing my mind one last time. Turbo repo starter. I want a real minimal turbo repo starter. You know what? PNPM create turbo. Turbo WASM. PNPM. Cool. Let's install. CD turbo WASM. Cool. I wanted to yoink this guy. Paste it here. Open up new terminal. CD into packages WASM. And it was, what was the build? Yeah, WASM pack build. There we go. Cool. We're giving that another shot. We can go in here. What was the code that the author of the article changed? Public API TS. It's a DTS file. You can't just change that. There is no .ts. There's just the DTS files. What the fuck? Or find, is this the same one? Ah, it's from following along. That makes more sense. Thank you guys. Got the WASM code. Source. Yeah, the public API is up a bunch, which is very interesting because this generates with a package JSON. Are they just ignoring that and writing their own package JSON up here? Yeah, that does appear to be what they're doing, which is an interesting way of solving that problem. I'm going to explicitly not do that because I don't like that. I would like to believe that the WASM code that it generates and the module that it spits out is usable. And we're going to see if that's the case. Should theoretically be easy to test that. In here, we might have to make the PNPM workspace aware that exists. Honestly, the easiest way to do that is just going to be to yoink out this package, which is get ignored. That shouldn't affect that, but I'm curious. Cool. We'll leave that as example rust lib. I'll rename this to example rust lib. Cool. And now with that all theoretically handled, I should be able to example rust lib workspace star and pnpm install, pnpm dev, filter. What's the web project called? Just web. Localhost 3000. Looking good so far. Let's do the initialization code now. Hop over here. I'm just going to yoink the page code I'd written here. These aren't coming from there anymore. These are coming from example rust lib now. Just going to see what happens with this first and foremost. Error, probably going to be the same error. Yep, cool. So let's take another look at how the fuck this stuff's actually making its way to the browser. I don't like hacking the path for that. That's not a great solution for that. That should be exported from its package rather than being imported this way. Okay, here's the key. We actually have to include the WASM as an asset that can be referenced. Very interesting. So if we want to do the same thing, the quickest way that I can think of is we just grab it, like the same way I was showing before, and I just dump that in public, and then we can reference it and actually show how they include the .wasm file. Fuck. This looks like a decent starting point, actually. We'll make a WASM component.tsx, paste. So this would come from, I guess this would be example rust lib / get factorial is what we want. And here it's going to console.log get factorial of 10 factored. And here it's going to render hi. I don't even need props. I don't care. Delete that. Don't even need that. Export const rust component. Let's see if this finally works. Nope. It does not. Don't really care about that. What is it so mad about? Remove the as in the WASM import? Yeah, I did, but that's not going to break this. Console.log, trying, network. Response. Interesting. It's getting a bunch of junk in here, but none of it's actually behaving how I would expect. I'm going to try the manual WASM loader. That's my last hope here before I scrap this idea entirely. I'm going to even be lazy about it. We're going to nuke this. This means we're also nuking this. I'll do that there. And I'm going to go copy paste some more of these files around. We're going to dump this in, oh, it's already in public. So we'll rename this to wasm / example.wasm. Okay, so we have the result, and the result has that 2 factorial, which we'll throw 10 in. And we can console.log wasm responded. Expected a string. Oh, is it that? No. What's the error we're getting here then? Oh boy. As you guys can see, WASM's really easy to use and set up. Okay, is this mad that I'm doing it somewhere I'm not supposed to? Failure to parse URL from / oh, I know what's happening. That's fucking stupid. Okay, ready to see why I'm angry? Browser only. I'm gonna yoink this. I forgot to name this. Browser only.ts. Use client just for the sake of it. Export default function do WASM stuff. Cool. So what I'm going to do now in order to get this to work in the browser, because that's the only place I give a shit about, is we're going to use Next Dynamic, which is very helpful for these types of things, because we're going to specify that this WASM component is only usable in the browser. Browser only. This is a function. So now on the on click, I can just call this. Or is this only for components, technically? I don't give a shit. We're trying it. Got to make a button again. Not happy with that. Great. Wonderful. We love that. Honestly, not even importing dynamically, just importing it should work technically because we're not using it until we're here. So import WASM test from, why do I keep thinking it's that? It's browser only. There we go. Result.2 factorial is not a function. Progress. Console.log, WASM response, results. Okay, we have a module. You have to dig deep for that. That's not annoying as fuck. Oh boy, just got some interesting info from chat. Even if this works, I'll have trouble passing anything other than numbers because WASM pack build stuff includes converting and allocating strings to what Rust side expects. Yeah, this is what I thought I was going to have to do. Yeah, results.instance.exports.2 factorial. Theoretically, oh, it's get factorial. So close. I said I forgot to return there. Really? Really? Did we just go through all of that just to have a binary that we can't even fucking use? I'm in pain. Anybody got any smart ideas? There's no error. I'm just getting back nothing. Do I have to await? No, but even then we would get back a promise here. But the response from get factorial is undefined. Everybody's saying await? No, it doesn't matter because it's not returning a promise. It's returning nothing. The initialization is happening through this fetch call and the WebAssembly.instantiate streaming, where we fetch this WASM file. And then we get the response, which is now a module that we should be able to call. Like, there's no reason this should not be working. Try passing the number as a string. If this works, I'm going to be even madder. Nope. Okay, so what we're going to try is even more chaotic. Because now we can play with this in the browser, because this WASM/example WASM thing should exist. WASM binding equal just this part. Now I can theoretically call this directly. Instance.exports.getFactorial. And it just never returns anything. GetFactorial is a function that calls native code. Somebody linked me a message that should theoretically help. The fuck is this shit? You have to manually pull it out of the memory? What the fuck? When did that happen? Is that what this does? Are you kidding? That's so much worse. Holy shit. Okay, well, that's the eureka moment. I'm in pain. I'm in a lot of pain. Okay, let's take a look at this remix thing again and see how they're handling the packaging of this. I think I'm just going to yoink this and use that as a starting point. Download, paste. I'm going to delete all the other things I have in here because they're all cursed as fucking balls. Delete, delete. Browser only, honestly, I can delete that too. Delete that, and get rid of the WASM I have there. And theoretically, I should be able to %ls, yep, cd packages, Rust, Fibonacci, cargo, or no, it was a WASM pack build. Theoretically, it should just be as simple as importing this now. So if we go back into the web app, we swap this to be example Rust Fibonacci, pnpm into cv root, pnpm install again, kill that while we're waiting, pnpm dev filter web, and theoretically, What the fuck? Where are my type definitions? That should have worked. We'll just try this. And where the fuck's WASM binary coming from? Ah. And let's see if this works. We got bets on this, over, under, otherwise. Nope. Okay, why is it so mad about that module? We have all of that there. Oh, it's because I didn't run their build command. I just ran ours. Yeah, that would do it. Cool. PNPM build. We'll use their build command this time. My bad on that. What the fuck's that mad about? We're just going to build this. PNPM build. Wait, no, that's not what we want to. C packages, Rust, PNPM build. I might have to reinstall too. Hopefully, this chaos self-emphasized that this stuff is not as easy as just use Rust. This fucking sucks. Why are those bindings not working still? Project packages Rust Fibonacci build node Rust Fibonacci.js. Okay, it thinks that doesn't exist. Build node Rust Fibonacci.js. It absolutely exists. So Rust Fibonacci bg.wasm doesn't? It does. It's right here. The quickest fix I can think of is to once again force this to be client only. Only.tsx, use client, export, default, function, client only. Cool. We're just going to copy all these contents. Delete, grab this, go back here, delete all of that, delete this, import dynamic from next dynamic. Theoretically, it's just a bundling issue. That may have just solved it. Woo! How long did that take? An hour, roughly? I hate everything. That was so awful. First try. Yay. That hurt me a lot. So if I understand correctly, the issue we had there was that the node import binding was not playing nice with Webpack, but when I abstracted it out so that that binding only needs to be imported in the browser, not in the server, it works. But we still don't have type definitions working. Maybe reload the window? Maybe. Nope. Cool. That's the best we're going to do for this. Let's see how nice they tell the tale so we know how much pain we just had relative to them. I think we were at the change the git ignore. I remember this. Yeah. Preparing the workspace. We add this to the TS config so that it knows where things are, which you shouldn't have to do. It's kind of sketchy that you have to do that. That's part of the point of a monorepo, is that you can rely on like package management the traditional way. Like I'd be very surprised if in this remix example that we found, they were modifying the TS config in a meaningful way. Yep. Nothing special in here. So that's definitely points towards the non-NX and Angular way, but at least they brute force it to work faster. This lets them get code completion in the IDE without rebuilding the library. Okay, that part's nice. Our app will need the WASM file that the library generates declared in the Angular JSON. So assets, again, Angular has its own build JSON config where you tell it where to get assets from rather than specifying those through things like Webpack or importing them and having it all get resolved. The equivalent for this, for what we're doing, is in this file, we actually import the WASM binary and then we init it using the init WASM from the Rust Fibonacci. But we have to have loaded this binary first before we can call that init call. I realized I could have made this work a lot quicker now that I've had that moment click. But that is a lesson that I now know to pursue it in future time. So this could have been done a lot faster if I had put together the simplicity of importing a WASM file like that and just passing it and it working. That makes this a lot less painful. But the other issue is that this Fibonacci call coming from here isn't just calling the binding directly. You have to deal with all of the weird memory stuff between the things. So in the librs file, we're doing a nice fancy clean match with a recursive call, but we also have this JS code that gets created by the WASM bindgen package. This code does a lot of shit. It worries about managing memory. It worries about actually calling things here. It does this fun shift on what is returned to get you an actual result. So it's not as bad as it was in the example that we were just working with, where it literally like, where is the source JS code in here? It was really scary. Yeah, all this shit where we have to like access specific memory values and bind pointers through WASM to get the value out. Oof, fuck all of that. Very thankful this one's a good bit simpler, like a lot bit simpler. Is there a config that made it like that? I'm curious now why that one is so much less obnoxious. Cargo, no, that all seems the same. Very interesting. Yeah, I'm not paid enough to understand the difference between these things. Back to the article though, because I want to see the rest here. We replace the contents of the example HTML with a new template that calls the calculate functions. This is just Angular as usual. They even showed some CSS. But then we actually load the WASM module. So we have the get vectorial and the init example. The init call gets called ng on init, the equivalent of like an on mount. Where do we actually call the calculation here? This code does not compute in my React brain, setting a state and then setting a timeout so that you can not override that state immediately. Fun solution here. We have the timeout set also to make sure we have the init done. Just funny. So we set the timeout, run the performance call. We call this factorial a shitload of times to show how fast it is. Then we log how long that actually took. And then we log that info out. Now we have the actual factorial function below. I hate defining the function below where it's being called, just a brain thing. Part of why I like arrow functions, but that's fine. That's the JavaScript version. Okay. So where's the Rust version then? Oh, I see. This one wasn't even sending you back the response. It's doing the whole loop by itself, I think. It's doing this one a shitload of times. It's not doing that one that much though, is it? Let me reread the code here. Oh yeah, it is. Okay. That makes a little more sense. This isn't just returning a number. It's returning a string for the final result after it like recursively does its thing over and over again. Okay. Makes a tiny bit more sense now. Still, that was chaotic. Jesus Christ. You notice in the Rust code, TypeScript code, we're calculating the same factorial a million times using the same algorithm. And it takes about a third as much time to do it in Rust as it does in JS. Cool. This article only explains how to start using Rust in your Angular apps. The real usage will require much more knowledge, and one article is not enough. Yeah, and one video certainly isn't either. Huge shout out to the author for writing this one. What a journey this was. Thank you, Oz, for bringing us along with it. And I'm curious what you guys think. Are you going to go force Rust into your next project, or did the pain of watching me try and figure it out myself turn you off? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, peace, nerds.